We're going to look at narcissism versus emotional and spiritual maturity, because really narcissism is actually the opposite. But oftentimes people refer to narcissism and want to understand it, and I thought we'd talk about it from our perspective. You know, narcissism is being stuck in a childhood emotional state with an adult intellect, right? So I'm emotionally very, very young, and yet I have a developed intellect. It's also being fixated on meeting your own wants and needs without any regard to the wants and needs of another. The story of Narcissus was in Greek mythology. The guy looked into the pond, he saw his reflection, and he was just absorbed in himself, like he couldn't see past himself. And that's what really narcissism is that we've become so engrossed in our own needs and wants, and we totally disconnect from the needs and wants of others. But when we get older, we actually will use meeting the needs and wants of another person in order to manipulate them to meet our own needs. So it ultimately, even in our giving, it becomes about ourselves. It becomes about getting our own needs met. And then it's also fundamentally about being a taker and not a giver. I've been reflecting on the verse in John's Gospel, chapter 10, verse 10. And you all know the scripture. It says, the thief comes not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I come to give you life and to give it more abundantly. The context of Jesus teaching that was that he was talking about the Pharisees who were taking from the people and not shepherding them and not being good to them, but using them. He's talking about the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's talking about an individual, which I think is a good definition of a narcissist, right? Is that when you're in relationship with an individual like that, they're stealing, they're killing, they're destroying. The word that's translated as kill, from Greek to English is kill. A more accurate translation would be to sacrifice another on the altar in like smoke, in fire. It's actually using someone else and sacrificing them so that I can benefit. The transition is the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. When there's a taker, then it's doing those things. And when we do that persistently, it becomes very life-taking, right? Then Jesus says, I come to give you life and to give it more abundantly. So the opposite of narcissism, which is taking, is becoming what? A giver and giving life. And not only giving life, but pouring it out and giving it more abundantly.
Holly Kim and I lead an online program called Transform You. It's an intensive online coaching program for individuals and couples. If that's something that you're interested in, click on the link below and we'll get you some information. Now back to the teaching.
There's the fundamental difference. Narcissism is about taking, stealing, destroying, and mature emotional and spiritual adulthood of maturity is about giving, getting to that place. In our own growth and development, that's where we go from takers to givers. When a person doesn't get their receiving needs met, or if they have trauma or they have hurts and they get stuck in those earlier stages, then they get stuck in what? The taking mode. And then when they grow up and become smarter and they're stuck emotionally in the taking mode, that's what we call what? Narcissism. It's not necessarily a bad person. It can have bad manifestations. But at its root, it's really a person that's stuck in an early emotional state, has not figured out how to get their needs met, and is using the world to do that and doing it at a very immature level. So the opposite of that, the emotional or spiritual maturity is, this is marked by an individual that their close relationships have to do with giving and receiving, and there's a healthy flow of that dynamic in what we call reciprocity. If Halichem and I's relationship is flowing real well, there's a giving, there's a receiving, there's a mutualness in that. Sometimes I'm giving more, sometimes she's giving more. There's a flow, and that's what we would associate with maturity. If there was a giving, and not much giving back, okay, then that creates a different dynamic in a relationship. When we grow and we start doing our work with our containing our protector, which I would say our protector is the narcissistic part, right? Because it's always about me. And we start doing the healing work, then we start to get in touch with our passion. And when we start to get in touch with our passion, then we start to find the targets that we feel called to give to. We give life, and it could be as a mother, it could be to a family member, as a business person, it could be to the community that we serve. It could be an organization. It could be a cause. But there's a place where, as we mature, we get a giving vision. And we start engaging in that, and then we start working in our purpose. It's embracing, sacrificing, loving, and giving to others as a life mission, which is true emotional and spiritual maturity. We're all on that continuum to move into that greater place of giving. And wherever we're stuck is where we need to do our work to work through it. And in some ways, get our needs met. If I was never validated in certain ways, such as never good enough or whatever, and that becomes a wound, and then I start trying to live life just to try to get that need met, and I start manipulating things and doing all kinds of things, and it becomes my protector needs to be good enough, driven and driven. Well, until that need is satisfied in a healthy way, I stay stuck in it. But when I get it satisfied in a healthy way, then it no longer drives me, and I can move into a more authentic, a more pure giving that's not just about trying to get the message that I'm good enough or that enough. So the hallmark litmus test of going from narcissistic to mature spiritual adulthood, emotional and spiritual adulthood, is I go from a taker to what? A giver.